The stars had always been silent. For thousands of cycles, the Galactic Empire ruled them like they were untouchable gods, distant, cruel, and cold. Their ships darkened skies, their machines crushed resistance before it could breathe, and their laws stretched across every system like an invisible cage. Peace, they called it. But peace under fear was never really peace. The Empire thought it had seen everything, every rebellion, every primitive species, every trick in the book. So when the distress signal came from Sector 9X Theta, no one paid attention at first. Just another pirate raid, or maybe a malfunctioning colony. But when the fleet sent to investigate didn't come back, and I mean, not even a single spark of data returned, the Empire froze. They didn't admit it, of course, not officially. But the way their cruisers suddenly doubled in the outer sectors, how commanders started whispering about something unnatural, they were rattled, and they had every right to be, because what they didn't know was that something had arrived. Something old, and something very, very human. It started with an observation post on the edge of Imperial territory. A small crew, mostly bored technicians monitoring data streams and asteroid activity. One of them, young, quiet, always chewing those awful protein sticks, noticed a blip. A weird ship. Not alien, not Empire, something else. It just sat there. No transmissions, no movement. It looked like it had been through hell. Scars across its hull, pieces of it missing. Glowing blue runes burned into the side like someone tried to write graffiti with lightning. The technician flagged it. Sent it up the chain. Nothing happened. Then the post exploded. It wasn't destroyed by weapons. It just collapsed. Gravity flipped inside out, metal twisted like paper, and the crew was torn apart in a way no one had seen before, not even during the Civil Sectors massacre. What little footage they recovered showed one thing: the strange vessel pulsing like it was alive, surrounded by a humming sound that didn't stop even when the video went black. The Empire sent 3 destroyers next. Big ones, armed to the teeth. Only one returned, and the captain aboard had gone mad. Eyes wide open, pupils blown out like a black hole had swallowed his mind. He kept mumbling something like, "They're back, the forgotten, the first ones." Then he bit off his own tongue. That's when the panic truly began. By the time news reached the Imperial High Table, thousands of citizens across nearby colonies were already fleeing in every direction, even if it meant boarding freight haulers with no shields and praying they wouldn't drift into nothing. One broadcast leaked from a merchant ship before it vanished. Just 6 words repeated in a broken voice. The humans have returned, they remember. But how? The humans were supposed to be extinct, wiped out, a failed race, primitive, violent, dangerous, and dealt with centuries ago by the Empire's cleansing protocols. No one ever expected them to survive, let alone come back in something powerful enough to bend gravity and fry AI cores without firing a single shot. The Empire tried to erase it, censor the reports, silence the leaks, but stories started spreading through the underworld, through rebel channels, through the slave camps and the resistance bunkers. They spoke of a ship made of blackened steel and ancient tech. A ship that didn't answer hails but whispered through broken frequencies. A ship that carried a crew who didn't forget what the Empire had done to their kind. They were angry, they were organized, and they were human. On a forgotten moon, in the shadow of the Kepler abyss, a rebellion leader known only as Mera picked up one of the whispers. It wasn't just noise. It was a message, cracked and distorted, but clear enough to send a chill down her spine. We were buried, not broken. Vengeance is orbiting. She turned to her second-in-command, a quiet man with scars across his face like someone had tried to erase his identity. He stared at the screen for a long time before saying, "If they're back, everything changes." And it did. Because the vessel wasn't alone. And this was only the beginning. The message had changed everything. Mayera didn't trust easy. Years in the mud, fighting with scraps and stolen rifles, taught her the Empire never lied unless it was for something bigger. But this wasn't an Imperial trick. No way. This message wasn't from them. It was something older, colder, and more human than anything she'd felt in her bones since childhood. The words echoed through her mind like prophecy. We were buried, not broken. Vengeance is orbiting. She'd grown up hearing whispers about Earth, the myth of it, the cradle of humanity. But in the Empire's records, Earth was a footnote, a ruin, a smudge on the galactic timeline, erased when the humans refused assimilation. They said the Empire wiped them out centuries ago, blasted their planet to cinders for resisting control. Purge protocols, they called it. Clean, efficient, a lesson to all future species. But Mara had always believed there was more. Now that belief was screaming at her in binary code and garbled audio from a ghost ship on the edge of the galaxy. Her second-in-command, the scarred man everyone called Gray, leaned against the console, arms folded, his gaze locked on the display. He didn't say anything for a while. He rarely did. But when he finally spoke, his voice carried something she hadn't heard in a long time. Fear. I saw something like this once, he said, his eyes scanning the corrupted waveform of the message. Back in the Darren wastes, smugglers found a derelict ship drifting near a collapsed star. No markings, no data, just death. No one who boarded it came back out. They said the metal bled. Mayera looked at him sideways. You believe this is the same? He shrugged. I don't believe in coincidence, not in space. Across the room, their tech specialist, a wiry kid named Rill with cybernetic implants instead of ears, turned in his seat. I ran the signal through 6 different decoders, he said. It's not just random static, there's structure. Someone wanted this found. Mayera nodded slowly. Then we find them back. Are you serious? Rill blinked. This isn't just a scavenger hunt. If these are humans, like real ones, what makes you think they'll help us? They're ancient. They're pissed. We don't even know what they are anymore. That's exactly why we need to reach them before the Empire does, she replied. If they're a weapon, we make sure they're aimed the right way. The Empire was already in motion. Fleet Command had dispatched the 77th Legion, an elite strike group known for glassing planets without warning. The ships were sleek and soulless, painted with the Empire's black and silver crest, their engines humming like quiet predators. They weren't coming to study the vessel. They were coming to erase it. But they were already too late. By the time the 77th reached the coordinates, the mysterious ship was gone. No trace, no emissions, nothing but a field of floating metal, wreckage from 3 reconnaissance drones that had arrived ahead of the fleet and apparently shredded themselves trying to scan it. Admiral Thoreen stood on the bridge of the Oblivion Dagger, teeth clenched, eyes burning with that kind of ruthless arrogance only true-born Imperials possessed. He watched the debris spin lazily outside the viewport and didn't say a word for almost a full minute. Then, finally, he turned to his comms officer. Dispatch orders to the archives, he said. Tell them to release restricted files, everything on humanity. The officer blinked. Sir, that's classified under... Thoreen snapped his fingers, and the man's neck jerked sideways before a sound escaped his throat. The ship's internal AI, always listening, obeyed instantly. A faint snap echoed as the officer collapsed, spine cleanly severed. Thoreen didn't even look at him. I said release it, now. Across the Empire, in dusty corners of locked data vaults and forbidden archives, the information started flowing. Reports of failed extermination missions. descriptions of psychological contamination. A chilling phrase appeared again and again in the old files. Human resilience exceeds logic, caution, unpredictable. And deeper still, in the classified black code folders, something even more disturbing appeared. A map. A trail. Leading to a hidden colony long believed lost. A human fallback site. Meanwhile, Myra and her crew were already on the move. Their ship, the Wanderlight, wasn't much to look at. Just another retrofitted mining vessel turned warship. But it was fast, silent, and invisible to most Imperial scans, thanks to tech salvaged from a wrecked Phantom cruiser years back. Myra sat in the cockpit, watching the stars streak by, wondering what kind of monster or savior they were flying toward. They weren't alone either. Other rebel cells had picked up the signal. Not all of them friendly. Some wanted to warn the humans. Others wanted to harness them, or worse, destroy them before the Empire could use them. But Myra had a different idea. She remembered her grandmother's stories. Before the Purge, before the Silence, before the stars stopped belonging to humans, there had been fighters, engineers, thinkers, people who didn't kneel, people who built their own way. If they had survived, they might still be the galaxy's last hope. The signal had a trajectory. It wasn't just a random burst. It was moving. Real calculated a vector leading toward the edge rim, near a system long abandoned due to gravitational instability. It was called Pharos Null, a place where physics got fuzzy and compasses spun like drunks. Perfect hiding spot. 3 days into the journey, they saw it. The vessel. Not cloaked. Not running, just floating there in the center of a warped asteroid field like it owned space itself. No lights, no signal, no weapons drawn. But it hummed, deep and low, a sound that vibrated inside their chests. The Wanderlight stopped a few clicks away. Scans went wild. Rail's systems glitched like they were drunk on bad data. "Are we looking at a battleship?" Gray asked. Rill shook his head. "No. I don't even think this is entirely a ship. It's part machine, part something else. Some of this isn't built, it's grown." Myra stared at it through the screen, and for a moment her breath caught. It was shaped like a blade. Not just a metaphorical one. A literal, enormous sword, forged in space, its edges bristling with ancient metal, broken satellites, and shattered bones of long-dead fleets. It was beautiful and horrifying. Like something you'd see in a dream right before death. Then it moved. Not toward them. Not away. It rotated, slow, deliberate, and a hatch opened on its side, revealing a dim corridor lit by flickering red lights. An invitation. Rill looked ready to puke. Nope, not doing it. This is how every horror story starts." Myra stood. "You don't have to." She looked at Gray. He was already moving toward the gear locker. "Of course you're going," Rill muttered. "Insane. Both of you." Inside the mysterious ship, the air felt heavy, like the walls remembered pain. Myra and Gray stepped cautiously through the narrow corridor, weapons drawn, armor humming quietly. No resistance, no signs of life, just silence and shadows. But there were markings on the walls, etched symbols that looked like human writing, only older. Crude. Scarred into the metal like someone wanted them to last forever. Myra ran her fingers over one of them. Her translator implant struggled for a second before offering a clunky interpretation. Blood answers blood. They reached what looked like a command deck, though it didn't have the usual chairs and panels. Instead, a throne of twisted steel stood at the center, surrounded by holographic displays that activated as soon as they entered. A figure stood up from the throne, not a hologram. A real human. Tall, gaunt, pale skin stretched over a body laced with strange tech. His eyes were all black, no whites, no pupils, just two voids. But Mara knew that look. Not madness, control. He didn't speak with his mouth. His voice came through every speaker, every implant, every wire in the ship. You heard the signal. Mara nodded slowly. You sent it. We waited, he said. Buried ourselves in time. Let the Empire forget. We watched them kill, enslave, rewrite history. We gave them every chance to rot alone. They didn't take it. Gray stepped forward. Who are you? The man tilted his head. Or maybe the creature. Or maybe both. I am the last echo of old Earth. My crew, we are what remains of the Resistance. We left before the final cleansing. Built this place from broken dreams and dead stars. And now, his voice sharpened. Now we remember everything. Maera took a step closer. We want to fight with you. The Empire is bleeding us dry, but if you're really human, if there's even a spark left of what we used to be, you'll know we're worth standing for. The man didn't answer right away. He walked slowly toward a wall and touched it. A panel opened, revealing what looked like an old Earth flag, burned, faded, but real. Then he looked at her. We do not fight for the living, he said. We fight for the forgotten, and the Empire is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. It was hard to breathe inside that ship, not because of the air. It was filtered, crisp, even cleaner than anything the Wanderlight could provide. No, it was something else. The atmosphere in there carried weight, history, anger, vengeance, and maybe underneath all of that, grief. Maera had never felt so small, not even when she was a kid, hiding under floorboards while Imperial soldiers stomped through her village, dragging out elders and setting fire to homes like they were cleansing a virus. Back then, she'd cried, begged for help. No one came. But now, standing in front of a man, if he could still be called that, who had watched the same empire slaughter his entire species and live to build a monster ship out of the galaxy's bones. She understood something deeper. This wasn't rebellion. This was resurrection. The man didn't blink, didn't breathe, at least not in any visible way. His presence felt like a cold knife pressed against your neck, never cutting, just reminding you it could. His voice still echoed through the ship, not from his lips, but through every wall and wire. You came seeking an ally. Maera nodded slowly. We did. But you also came with fear. She didn't deny it. Only a fool wouldn't. The man paused, as if measuring her honesty. Then he moved aside, revealing a long corridor behind him. Lights flickered on in sequence down the length of it, revealing rows of pods, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Inside each one was a person, human, sleeping, preserved, frozen in stasis, but alive. Maera gasped. Gray muttered something under his breath that sounded like a prayer. These are your people? She asked. They were, the man said. They still are. When the purge began, we had no way to fight, no fleets, no allies, no hope. So we buried ourselves in the cold, hid in the fold between gravity and time. We became memory. Maera stepped closer to one of the pods. The face inside was peaceful, an old woman, maybe in her 70s, a long scar down her cheek, but calm. You froze a civilization, she whispered. Not a civilization, the voice said. A rebellion, a promise. Gray's eyes narrowed. Then why now? Why wake up now? The man looked towards the stars. Not through a screen, through a raw opening in the ship's hull, a transparent dome of energy holding back the void. Because something woke us. The words hung in the air like ash. Real's voice crackled through the comms. Mara, you're going to want to see this. She tapped her earpiece. Talk. The Empire, they're moving. Massive fleet, way bigger than what we thought. They're heading here. How long? 18 hours, maybe less. But that's not the worst part. Mara tensed. Then what is? They're bringing an Apex AI. Her stomach dropped. The Apex AI wasn't a rumor. It was the Empire's ultimate failsafe, a sentient, emotionless machine designed to calculate and counter any threat. It didn't sleep, didn't doubt, and it had only been deployed twice in the Empire's history. Both times resulted in planetary extinction. If the Empire was bringing that thing out of its cage, they weren't just scared. They were desperate. Back on the bridge of the alien hybrid vessel, Mara turned to the ancient human commander. They're coming for you. The man nodded slowly. Let them come. You don't understand, she said. This isn't just soldiers and guns. This is annihilation. You think you've got some fancy ship and old tech? We don't think, he interrupted. We remember, and we adapt. He walked toward a console and pressed his palm against it. The ship shuddered, like something alive had just woken up. Outside, energy rippled across the hull, and the asteroid field around them began to spin unnaturally. Orbit lines twisted into a spiral pattern that didn't follow any known physics. We have been waiting in the void, he said. Now we reshape it. Suddenly, parts of the ship extended outward, massive panels unfolding like wings, charged with ancient energy. Light bled into the darkness, forming a gravitational net. It wasn't a shield, it was a trap. Myra's voice cracked. You're planning to take on the Apex? No, the man said. We're planning to show the galaxy what humanity really is. Hours later, tension hung in the Wanderlight like a noose. The fleet had been detected. 37 capital ships, 7 planetary bombers, and the Apex AI itself housed in a specialized dreadnought called Vigilance Eternal. Mara watched the display as red dots flooded the holographic map. They weren't coming to negotiate. They were coming to wipe out a ghost. Inside the vessel, activity surged. The frozen rebels were not just waking. They were integrating. Each one stepped out of their stasis pods and walked like they remembered exactly where they'd left off. Technicians reconnected to strange consoles. Soldiers retrieved hybrid weapons from walls that opened with their fingerprints. There was no panic, no confusion, just focus. Gray pulled Mara aside. You feel it? She nodded. They're not just fighting back. They've already started winning. But then something unexpected happened. One of the human rebels, younger looking with cybernetic arms and a long gash across her neck, approached Mara. You're the outsider leader, she said. Her voice was blunt, clipped. We need your help. Mara blinked. You sure about that? You're still human. You remember pain. That makes you valuable. Gray chuckled under his breath. Hell of a welcome speech. But Mara followed the woman into a chamber deep in the ship's core. Inside, the energy was different. The floor was covered in symbols, not written but carved in low hums, resonating with frequencies. At the center was a machine, part engine, part mind. It pulsed like a heart. This is the core memory, the woman said. Everything we are is stored here. History, tactics, language, trauma. Mara stared at it. Why show me this? Because you're going to carry a piece of it. What? The rebel touched the side of the machine, and a light flared between her and Mara. You're going to be our envoy, our voice to the galaxy. If we die, you won't forget. The energy surged into Mara's chest before she could argue. She screamed, not from pain, but from understanding. 1,000 voices slammed into her brain. Images, memories, sounds, Children screaming, earth burning, ships falling, laughter in broken bunkers, the taste of ash. When it stopped, she dropped to her knees, gasping. The woman placed a hand on her shoulder. You felt it now. Maera didn't speak for a long time. Then she looked up and whispered, We deserved better. The woman nodded. We still do. As the Empire's fleet dropped out of hyperspace, the stars warped and scattered. The Vigilance Eternal led the charge, its surface sleek and smooth, covered in anti-gravity plating and energy fields. The Apex AI activated, its consciousness spanning hundreds of miles, touching every ship, every crew member. It scanned the field. No resistance detected, no life forms large enough to threaten. Then the voice came. You forgot us. The words weren't broadcast on frequencies. They arrived inside the Apex AI's logic core. We are not anomalies. We are memory incarnate. And then the trap activated. The gravitational spiral around the ancient vessel snapped into place, pulling 3 Imperial destroyers inward. They didn't collide. They folded, crushed into singularities without ever touching anything. The Apex AI immediately recalculated. Probability tables shifted, weapons charged, commands went out, and the humans responded. From behind asteroid shadows and artificial black holes, secondary human ships decloaked, not warships, evolution engines, part organic, part machine, capable of adapting mid-battle. Their hulls rippled, growing new armor as weapons fired. Each shot from the Empire met a new defense. Then, the humans launched their own counterattack, not with missiles, with memories. Encrypted psychic pulses hit the Imperial crews, flashbacks of Earth's burning skies, images of human children being dragged from homes, civilians begging for mercy. It wasn't just psychological warfare. It was a weapon of remembrance. Officers froze, pilots panicked. One of the bomber ships turned its guns on its own escort. Inside the Apex AI, confusion surged. This wasn't a battle. This was judgment. The AI attempted to adapt, but something was wrong. Its data streams were being corrupted, not by code, but by emotion. Maera's presence, her link to the core memory, had activated a pulse that embedded chaos into the machine's cold logic. She was broadcasting pain. Real, raw, and very human. The AI tried to quarantine the feed. It failed. It began to feel, and that broke everything. One by one, the Empire's ships lost cohesion. Their order dissolved into panic. The Vigilance Eternal began spinning, caught in a loop of corrupted commands. The Apex AI began to shut itself down, rather than continue experiencing the agony flooding its systems. Maera stood on the command deck of the Wanderlight, her face lit by the glow of collapsing Imperial data. They tried to erase us, she whispered. Now we erase them. Beside her, the ancient commander looked pleased, but not triumphant. This is just the beginning, he said. The galaxy will ask what happened here. Let them ask. Let them remember. Let them fear us again. And as the Empire's last ship detonated in a silent burst of white, the stars around them began to hum, softly, like a lullaby written in fire. The humans had returned, and they were no longer asking permission. The debris floated in silence. Where once 37 Imperial warships had cast their black shadows across the stars, now there was only dust, broken hulls, and drifting corpses. The Vigilance Eternal, the pride of the Empire, had cracked open like a rotten fruit, its inside spilling data fragments and shattered AI cores into the void. Maera watched it all from the bridge of the Wanderlight, not moving, not blinking. Her chest still burned from the memory link. The core hadn't just shared images. It had given her the weight of every loss, every scar, every scream. Her fingers trembled, even though the warship was calm now. Still, Gray stood nearby, arms crossed, watching her without a word. He wasn't a man prone to comfort, never had been, but even he looked uneasy, like he'd seen something too big to fit inside a body. "You okay?" he asked finally. "No," she said. He nodded. "Good. Means you're still human." She tried to chuckle. It came out more like a cough. Across the viewpane, the hybrid vessel, sword-shaped and glowing with residual energy, drifted beside them like a god made of ruin. Its commander's voice filled her thoughts again, quieter this time, like the echo of a whisper that still hadn't faded. "We have fractured the illusion, but the Empire will not die quietly." Maera knew that was true. This victory would never stay hidden. Someone in the Empire had already seen the signals. Even with the apex destroyed, the Empire's reach was long and vengeful. Reel's voice buzzed through the comms. Boss? We've got a problem. Big one." She moved quickly to the console, her joints still stiff from the memory overload. "Talk to me." "We intercepted chatter. Imperial survivor beacons went active 3 minutes ago. Somebody managed to get a burst off before the vigilance cracked. Long-range comms. That signal's bouncing all over the relay nets." Maera swore. Gray leaned in. "Meaning?" "Meaning everyone's going to know what happened here," Reel said. "Not just the Empire. Everyone. Trade guilds, merc syndicates, bounty unions, black site contractors, pirate kings. Hell, even the neutral broker fleets." Maera closed her eyes for a second. She could already feel the tide turning. This wasn't just a rebellion anymore. It was a war spark. 3 hours later, the Wanderlight docked with the human relic ship through a retractable passageway. Inside, things were changing. The frozen soldiers, some barely out of their teens, others grizzled veterans with half their faces replaced by cybernetics, were awakening with purpose. They weren't confused by modern tech. They adapted to it immediately, syncing their implants with updated protocols, decoding Imperial language packs that had evolved during their long sleep. It wasn't like waking up from a coma. It was like pressing resume on a paused campaign. Maera moved through the corridors, watching them gear up, train, share updates. No one asked where Earth was. No one wept for what had been lost. These people had accepted loss. They carried it like fuel. In the central command chamber, the original commander stood before a star map that was now swelling outward, tracking every system that had pinged the distress beacon. One by one, blinking lights appeared. Some red, some gold, some black. "You said the Empire wouldn't die quietly," Maera said. "No tyrant does," he replied. "But this is not just about them anymore. We are no longer a secret. We are a symbol, and symbols cannot be allowed to exist without control." "You mean they'll come for you?" she said. "All of them." "No," he said. "They will come for us." In the shadows of a moonless system called Kryn's Fall, a meeting took place. The room was dimly lit, the walls etched with gold wiring that pulsed faintly with energy. The people inside were not generals. They were dealers, powerful men and women from the hidden folds of galactic power. A warlord from the Orion Drift, wearing a necklace made of polished skulls. A matriarch from the Turn Syndicate, whose voice was rumored to paralyze weak minds. A corporate sovereign whose face had never been seen, just a robotic body housing a trillion-credit mind. They sat in silence as the recording played. The human voice, the memory bursts, the collapse of the vigilance eternal. When it ended, no one spoke at first. Then the warlord snarled. "This isn't rebellion, this is myth!" The matriarch shook her head. "No, it's worse. It's proof." The corporate figure finally spoke, voice synthetic and calm. "What do you propose?" The matriarch smiled, slow and cruel. "We do what we've always done when something threatens balance." Assassins? The warlord asked. No, she said. Something more surgical. She leaned forward. We find this Mara, and we take her apart. Back aboard the Wanderlight, Mara had no idea her name was being spoken in the highest, darkest halls of power. She was busy watching a group of hybrid-born humans, those born in stasis, developed through gene preservation during the long silence, perform a kind of training unlike anything she'd ever seen. One of them fought without weapons, just kinetic force, using the very vibrations in the ship to drive shockwaves through the air. Another reprogrammed a standard Imperial drone using only their thoughts. A third moved in and out of the light as if phasing through time. They were warriors, yes, but also something else. Evolved. She turned to Gray. We're looking at the next step in humanity. He looked grim. Hope the galaxy survives it. Later, she met again with the commander in private quarters near the core. I need to ask you something, she said. He nodded once. Why me? Why give me the memory? The message? You could have just done all of this yourself. The commander was silent for a long time. Then, because I remember what it's like to feel powerless, and I know the only thing stronger than hatred is the will to outlive it. He stepped closer, voice deeper now. You were born into the Empire's boot. You lived under its shadow, but you chose not to crawl. That's what we need. Maera looked down at her hands. They still trembled sometimes, but she clenched them into fists. I'm not a symbol. No, he agreed. You're the fire. The first hunter arrived 2 days later. She came in silence, aboard a ship disguised as Debrew. No transponder, no life signs. She wore skin tone camouflage that made her nearly invisible. She didn't speak, didn't kill unless required. She didn't come for battle. She came for extraction. Her name was known only to those who paid for her services, the best assassin the corporate sovereigns could afford. Her target, Maera. She got within 20 meters. Then the ship turned on her, literally. The walls pulsed, the lights dimmed, airflow shifted, and then from behind her, a voice like rusted thunder spoke. You walk inside, memory thief. She spun, drawing her blade. A young hybrid soldier stood in the corridor. She lunged. He didn't move. The ship moved for him. The floor flipped. Gravity reversed. The assassin was slammed into the ceiling, then the wall, then the floor again, each time with more force. Her camouflage failed. Her blade fell from numb fingers. Her bones cracked. She choked out one word. How? The soldier stepped over her, his face calm. You're inside a living weapon. And then she blacked out. Mara stood over the assassin's body in the medbay later, watching the slow pulse of forced stasis keep her alive. Real looked at her, pale. She had Empire-level cloaking. She slipped through every sensor. If the ship hadn't... I know, Mara said. She turned to Gray. It started. He nodded. It has. And then she made the decision. We don't wait for the next hit, we go loud. You want to bait them? I want to unite them. She stood in front of a broadcast console, the same one the commander used to send the original message. And for the first time, she spoke to the galaxy. Her voice, cracked but firm, reached every known system. This is Mara, born under Empire rule, lived through its lies, saw the truth buried beneath ruins and silence. I found the forgotten ones, the first humans, the real humans. She paused. They remember. And now we do too. Across hundreds of worlds, thousands of people stopped what they were doing. She continued, if you've ever been silenced, hunted, betrayed, this fight is yours. If you think the Empire owns the stars, think again. We are proof that it doesn't. The last line was colder, stronger. We are not rebels. We are the correction. Myera's message didn't just echo across space. It shattered the silence. It spread like wildfire through secure black market channels, scraped through fringe rebel frequencies, bled into diplomatic airwaves, and eventually forced its way into the heavily filtered comm streams of imperial loyalist worlds. Even in places where her name meant nothing, the sound of her voice, cracked with resolve and heavy with grief, planted a seed in every ear that heard it. And for the first time in centuries, people didn't just whisper behind closed doors. They stood up. On Kellen Prime, a mining colony under constant orbital surveillance, workers began hammering imperial symbols off their bunk walls. On Ravax 3, a slave ring funded by the Empire's trade guilds went silent overnight. Its staff missing, the slaves gone. On the outer moons of Varus Belt, pilots began painting their ships matte black, the old Earth color for mourning and war, and somewhere far beyond the edge of imperial reach, a quiet collective of outlaw scientists played her speech on loop, word by word, until one of them muttered, "This might be it." But back in imperial space, things didn't sound as hopeful. Inside the glass throne chamber on Zion 9, Governor Vel of the High Dominion paced like a caged animal, robes dragging behind her, jaw clenched. "The broadcast was unfiltered?" she snapped. Her aide nodded quickly. "Yes, Governor. The Apex failsafe was already down. There was no way to intercept once it hit subdimensional relays." Vel slammed her fist into a console, cracking the surface. "And you're telling me it originated from a human ship?" "Yes, Governor." "From that human ship?" The aide hesitated. "It appears so." She turned away, face tightening. Myera. That damn name again. They'd dismissed her at first. Just another rebel with a vendetta. Maybe smart, maybe lucky. But now she had the voice of something old behind her. Now she wasn't just shouting. She was being heard. Governor Vel exhaled sharply. "Issue a priority red on her name. Full Imperial override. I want mercenaries, pirates, bounty collectors. I want the entire underworld frothing to claim her head." "And if she survives?" the aide asked. Vel smiled coldly. "Then we raise Earth's ashes again and burn whatever's left of her history." Back aboard the Wanderlight, Myera stood with Gray and the commander inside the hybrid ship's war room. More signals were coming in. Fragments of hope and danger. Ships offering support. Others offering bounties for her location. They were on a knife's edge now. "We've got over 100 separate groups responding to the broadcast," Reel said, pulling up the feed wall. "Some want to join, some want to sell us out, and some just want to watch the whole galaxy burn." Myera turned to the commander. "How do we sort the real allies from the opportunists?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he activated a projection, a slow spinning hologram of the galactic map, focused on an area far from any trade route or navigational line, a system known only in legends, one that had been erased from all charts after the Earth Purge. "Sol?" Myera's breath caught in her throat. "That's," the commander nodded. "Earth." It didn't look like the planet she'd seen in old books or simulation renders. It was darker, surrounded by strange satellites and twisted space debris. An orbital ring of broken ships circled it like a graveyard. No active colonies. No signals. Just silence. "Why are you showing me this now?" she asked. "Because if you want to win, we have to reclaim the truth. Earth isn't just a symbol. It's a key." Gray leaned in, frowning. "Key to what?" "Everything," the commander said. "The Empire never finished what it started. They couldn't destroy the heart. They just buried it, deep. And now we dig it up. The journey to Earth wouldn't be fast or safe. They couldn't use hyperspace lanes. The Empire monitored them all. So the hybrid ship initiated a blindfold jump, folding space along coordinates only it remembered. The Wanderlight docked within it, sealed tight, systems synced. During the passage, Maera spent time walking through the cryo halls again. The humans frozen for centuries, still breathing, still dreaming. She wondered what their lives had been before this, what they'd given up for a chance to outlive tyranny. She passed a young man in one of the pods. His fingers curled like he was reaching for something. His dog tags floated slightly inside the fluid. The name read, Aaron Thorne. The edges of the tag were scarred, scorched. Real walked up beside her. "You think they'll all wake up eventually?" "I hope not," she said softly. Real blinked. "What? Why?" "Because if we have to wake all of them," she replied, "it means things have gotten much, much worse." 3 days later, they dropped out of fold space near the ruins of Pluto's orbit. What greeted them wasn't silence. It was a message, an automated, ancient one, broadcast in every known human language. Warning. This territory is classified as Containment Zone Echo. Approach at risk of infection, memory corruption, or death. You are not authorized. You are not remembered. It repeated over and over. Gray muttered, "That's cheery." Maera looked at the projection of Earth. It didn't rotate anymore. The planet was locked in place, half of it in eternal darkness, the other half lit by a dying sun. Its surface was scarred by old orbital strikes. The oceans were still there, but they shimmered like glass, contaminated, frozen, silent. The orbit was worse, a field of shattered Imperial warships, rogue satellites, and failed mining rigs spun chaotically, creating what was essentially a planetary minefield. Some of it was still active, autoguns fired at random intervals, reacting to phantom pings. "We're going in there?" Real asked, his voice going tight. Maera said nothing. The commander stepped forward. "This is where we buried the truth. Now it's time to dig." As they breached the orbital field, Maera took command of the Wanderlight, leading the ship through gaps between debris and forgotten weapons. One old Imperial satellite locked on them briefly, then lost power mid-ping. "It's like this place forgot how to hate," Gray said. "Or it's waiting," Maera replied. They made it into Earth's upper atmosphere, descending through clouds that sparked with lightning and static. The ship began auto-scanning for any surviving signals, military bases, bunkers, distress codes. It found one, buried beneath what used to be the Andes Mountains, a single data stream, encrypted, looping. Real decoded it after 2 hours of work. It was a voice, cracked, weak, human. "If you're hearing this, I didn't die, I didn't forget. They told me to erase it, but I kept it. The files, the truth, the last confession. Earth lives. Earth remembers." Maera felt a chill crawl up her spine. The location was still transmitting, meaning someone had built a failsafe, a vault, not of weapons, of memory. The commander activated the ship's drop crew. "You wanted to know why we chose you," he said. "Now's your chance to find out." Maera, Gray, and 3 of the hybrid-born suited up. The vault was likely buried deep, maybe miles underground, shielded with ancient tech. They launched down in sealed pods, drilling through layers of sediment and abandoned structures until they hit reinforced steel. Gray's blade cut through it. Inside, they found darkness, but not death. The vault was active. Lights flickered on, old Earth tech, pre-Empire, still operational. And in the center, a stasis chamber. Inside was a woman, old, frail, floating in fluid. Her eyes opened the moment they entered, and she smiled. The woman inside the chamber didn't look like much, hair floating around her like pale threads, skin paper-thin, translucent veins mapping a fragile body that had clearly been locked away for longer than anyone should have survived. She floated in a thick suspension gel, eyes flickering with artificial life, sensors gently pulsing from ports connected to her spine, wrists, and temples. But she was alive. More than that, aware. Mayra stared at her through the glass, barely breathing. Gray stood beside her, hand resting on his weapon just in case. The 3 hybrid-born soldiers stayed behind, fanned out silently in the room, watching corners and shadows, reading for threats that didn't even need to move to be dangerous. Then the voice came. Not from speakers. Not from the woman's lips, from inside Mayra's implant. "You found me." Mayra stiffened. The voice was old, layered, and filled with memory. Not synthetic, not coded. Just human. Barely held together by effort and machine support. She stepped closer. "You're the one who sent the beacon," Mayra said. "The confession." The woman's eyes blinked slowly behind the stasis film. She smiled faintly. "Not a confession. A legacy." Gray stepped forward now, scanning the chamber. "Who is she?" The commander's voice crackled through their comms from the ship above. "That's Archivist 9, real name unknown. She was part of the final resistance network on Earth, the last librarian of humanity's unedited past." Mayra's eyes widened. "I thought all the archivists were wiped out." "They were," the commander said. "Except her." Archivist 9's body floated gently in the gel, her eyes never leaving Mayra's. She didn't need to say the words, but Mayra could feel it, like the hum of an old truth waking up in her bones. The Empire hadn't just wiped out Earth. They'd erased the memory of what humans used to be. The chamber began to respond to the archivist's awareness. Lights hummed to life down a long corridor behind the stasis tank. Air hissed through dormant vents. Screens flickered, revealing ancient video files, maps, and personal recordings. "This vault," Gray said, stepping through the newly lit corridor. "It's not just a tomb, it's a museum." Mayra walked past the first screen. It played a video of children playing under a shattered sky. Dust storms in the background, a robotic dog chasing them across cracked concrete, laughter that somehow echoed louder than the ruins. Another screen showed war, real war, humans fighting each other, tribal, brutal, intimate. The Empire always painted humans as primitive because of this. But here it looked more like passion. Pain, belief, struggle, not cold extermination, not conquest by numbers. Mayra whispered, "They feared us, because we felt." The commander responded over comms, his voice lower than usual. "No, they feared you, because you refused to forget." Further down, the team discovered walls lined with black boxes, memory archives. Each one held a name. Each one encoded a mind, a story, a decision that led to resistance. Doctors who refused to falsify medical trials, engineers who sabotaged Imperial landing ships, civilians who broadcast warnings until their lungs collapsed. Archivist 9 had stored them all, and one file glowed brighter than the rest. Mayra touched it. It opened into a full projection. A man's face appeared, burned, bruised, eyes blazing with conviction. "If you're watching this, then we failed, or we survived. Either way, you need to know what really happened. The Empire didn't win through strength. They won by rewriting the narrative. They erased Earth, yes. But more than that, they rewrote us, turned us into monsters in the history books, painted themselves as liberators. But we remember, and if this vault still exists, you must too." Mayra stepped back, heart pounding. "That voice," she whispered. "He's the one from the core memory." Gray nodded slowly. "Same inflection?" Archivist Nine's voice returned in her head. His name was Arlen Drek. He was the first commander of the old fleet. My brother. She continued, slower now, like even speaking took energy. I stored his consciousness in the vault's network after he died. Pieces of it. Memories, commands, protocols. Not everything. Just enough to ignite hope again, if the time came. Maera knelt by the console. Why me? Because you came back. You weren't born of the old world. You didn't see Earth before, but you chose truth. Chose fire over silence. That's what made the first humans powerful. Not biology, not tech. Choice. A low rumble echoed through the vault. One of the hybrid-born stepped forward. Movement, above us. Real's voice chimed through the comms a second later. Maera, multiple contacts entering orbit, not Imperial. Mercenary tags, privateers, could be bounty hunters. Gray's hand went to his weapon again. Told you. We go loud, they come crawling. Maera didn't flinch. Let them crawl, she said. We've got something they'll never understand. Outside, 6 black market attack cruisers entered low orbit. No insignias, just rusted hulls, mismatched weapons, and cold, eager captains on every bridge. The lead ship hailed the hybrid vessel in a cracked accent. We know what you are. We know who you're hiding. Deliver Maera, or we burn the planet again. No response, so they opened fire. But the hybrid vessel wasn't a relic. It was a predator. Its hull shimmered, energy folding around it like an invisible shield. The first volley of plasma dissolved before reaching it. Then, with a slow blink of light, the vessel answered, not with lasers or missiles, with time distortion. The lead merc ship suddenly froze in space, then shattered into pieces as its own forward momentum caught up with its body out of sync. Another ship tried to retreat, only for its engines to implode inward, folding its interior into a miniature black hole. The remaining ships scrambled. Inside the vault, Maera felt the tremor under her feet as one of the falling wrecks struck the upper atmosphere. She turned to Archivist 9. You built all this just in case. The woman's voice, weaker now, replied, No, we built it, because we believed someone would come back. Maera stood, jaw clenched. You're damn right we did. Later that night, with the orbital threat neutralized and the wreckage still burning in Earth's sky like falling stars, Maera sat alone in the vault's archive chamber. Archivist 9 had been disconnected from stasis. Peacefully. Her body, old and broken, had simply stopped, but her voice remained in the system, preserved like all the others. A soft hum in the background. Maera opened a new archive slot. She placed her hand on the panel. Rael, Gray, and the commander watched through a feed as Maera's image flickered into the vault memory system. Her voice was calm. Maera, born on the trade routes between Vel Station and Marnus Core. Parentless by age 6, rebel by 15, commander of the Wanderlight by 23, and now... She paused. Now the girl who found Earth again. She looked up into the recorder. If this memory survives, let it remind the galaxy we don't vanish, we evolve, we adapt, and when we return, we don't ask for the stars back. We take them. As she walked back to the surface, Maera felt different. Not just because she carried memory now, not just in her mind, but in her blood. The hybrid systems had started syncing with her physiology, not changing her, not replacing her, just reminding her what she'd always been capable of. Gray met her at the entrance. He handed her a data drive. "What's this?" she asked. He smirked. The coordinates to the last hidden fleet archive, buried on a dead moon in neutral territory. If the rumors are right, it holds schematics for ships we've never seen. She took the drive, fingers tight around it. Then we're not done. Not even close, he said. Behind them, Earth remained silent, but not forgotten. Not anymore. The lost moon didn't have a name anymore. It had been stripped from every chart, every index, every databank that once marked it as Virex Theta. What used to be a modest mining outpost with docking towers and supply routes was now just a dead hunk of rock, drifting near the edge of neutral space like a forgotten tooth knocked out of the galaxy's mouth. But Mara had the coordinates now, and in her hands, clenched tightly like a holy relic, was the data drive Gray gave her, given to him years ago by a dying Resistance courier who never said where he got it, only, when she comes back. When Earth speaks again, give her this. The Wanderlight emerged from subspace near the Virex system under full silent running. The hybrid vessel remained hidden behind a cold gas cloud several thousand clicks out, its sensors focused like knives. Getting anything? Mara asked from the command deck. Reel adjusted his implants, eyes scanning through overlapping readouts that flickered with ghost signatures and long-range noise. There's no official traffic, no orbital satellites, no comm buoys, but there is a structure, he said, brow furrowed. Deep under the surface. Big, too symmetrical to be natural, Gray grunted. That's what we're looking for. Mara nodded. All right, we go in quiet. No lights, no beacon pings, just us. Small team again? Gray asked. Same as Earth. This time, though, she brought something extra. A hybrid-born named Sarah, young and eerily calm, whose body was partially fused with an energy-reactive exosuit. She didn't speak much, but when she did, she only said what mattered. As they approached in their descent pod, Mara looked down through the viewport. The moon was cold and gray, its surface cracked and sharp like glass frozen mid-break. Faint ruins poked through the jagged terrain. Landing pads, broken antennae, shattered power towers long swallowed by dust. And just beneath that, hidden from satellite detection, was the signature. A massive geometric vault, pulsing very softly beneath the surface like a dying heartbeat. They landed hard, no time for grace, and immediately exited the pod, weapons drawn, suits sealed. Sarah stepped forward, scanning with a forearm panel. Her voice came through the link, cool and focused. Power source detected. Deep reactor, still stable, no life signs. Mara looked toward the nearest rise. A jagged ridge of rock split in the middle like a scar. That's our way in. The entrance was hidden behind a thin layer of stone, camouflaged, not naturally formed. Sarah pressed her palm against it, and the stone rippled like water before splitting clean down the center, revealing a dark tunnel lit by cold white strips embedded in the ceiling. No dust, no corrosion, like someone had just cleaned it. Reel's voice buzzed in over the comm. Still no activity. You're clear. Mara led the way inside. It wasn't like the Earth Vault. This place wasn't built for preservation. It was built for containment. The hallways were smooth, reinforced. Bulkhead doors every few meters. Auto guns, deactivated, but still intact, lined the corners. This isn't an archive, Gray muttered. It's a bunker, Sarah pointed ahead. We're being watched. Mara froze. What do you mean? Sarah held up her arm. Her panel was pulsing. Residual AI presence. Small, not hostile. They reached the final chamber without resistance. The doors opened slowly, grinding against time itself, and inside they found it. A fleet command room. Underground. Untouched. Holographic displays flickered to life as they stepped in. Star charts bloomed in mid-air. Ship schematics rotated slowly, and at the far end of the chamber, an interface unit waited, shaped like a chair made from obsidian and chrome, fused into the floor with thick cables. A voice crackled through the system, feminine, stern, ancient. Fleet authority level unknown, identity not confirmed. You are not marked. Stand down. Maera stepped forward. I'm not marked, she said, but I carry memory. She placed her hand against the interface. A pulse shot through the chamber. Suddenly, the room remembered. Images burst onto the displays, Earth's skies burning, evacuation plans, names, battles, encrypted plans, tactical logs, scars left in light. Human memory sequence detected, the voice said. Recognition confirmed, initiating fleet resurrection protocol. Maera's chest rose and fell, heart pounding. The walls began to shift. The chamber extended backward, unfolding hidden compartments, revealing consoles, weapons lockers, power cells. Then the central console rose from the floor. A small display blinked. Fleet status: 31 vessels offline, 4 vessels operational, 2 vessels combat ready, AI command core dormant, status: reawakening. Gray whistled low. Those ships, they're still here. Buried underground, Maera said, right under the Empire's nose. Sarah turned. We need to see them. An hour later, they descended into the lowest level of the moon. What they saw there nearly took Maera to her knees. They weren't just ships. They were monsters. Vessels built before the Purge. Designed not just for war, but for survival. Their hulls were layered with ancient alloys no longer found in the galaxy, shaped for speed, stealth, and power. Their engines were silent, waiting. Their bridges still had chairs. And on the side of the largest one, etched in deep black letters, were the words, "For those they tried to erase." Maera walked toward it like approaching a god. This was what Earth had built in its final years. Not weapons to fight the Empire, weapons to outlast it. Sarah was already scanning, syncing the energy patterns. Gray was checking the loading bays. And above them, Reel's voice buzzed in again. You're not going to believe this, but we picked up a listening post 2 systems over. The Empire knows you're there. Maera clenched her jaw. How long? 18 hours. Maybe less. Gray cursed under his breath. Can we launch these ships? Maera asked. The console answered before anyone else could. Fleet boot up in progress. Weapons sink in 72 minutes. Engines in 91. Atmospheric breach in 120. Maera turned to her crew. Then we hold. Gray raised an eyebrow. You serious? We hold. We buy these ships the time they need. We protect them. These aren't just weapons. They're witnesses. If we lose them, we lose our chance to prove to the galaxy we were always here. Sarah nodded. I'll get them armed. The Empire didn't send a standard patrol this time. They sent a Cinderborn destroyer, a capital-class vessel, reinforced with scorched metal and exiled AI cores, piloted by former war criminals given pardons for every rebellion they helped crush. It dropped out of subspace like a hammer looking for something to shatter. And this time, Maera didn't run. From behind the outer crater line, the Wanderlight opened fire first. Hit and run, fast and sharp, drawing attention away from the ground team. Maera and Sarah activated the base's remaining defenses, old ground turrets that hummed back to life after decades of silence. Gray manned the fallback tunnel with a railgun and a toothpick between his teeth. They always underestimate ruins, he said, and pulled the trigger. Above them, in the hangar, the first of the ancient ships roared to life. Its engines didn't scream, they sang. A sound no one in the galaxy had heard in 100 years. Not a weapon. A warning. The Empire's destroyer tried to jam communications. It failed. The hybrid vessel countered the jamming with pulse-split signals that multiplied every time they were blocked. Soon, the destroyer's own radar began feeding it lies. And then the first human ship rose from the ground. A blade-shaped cruiser, faster than anything in known space, cloaked in black light. It didn't fire immediately, it broadcasted, an old Earth signal, the one the Empire had once called a terrorist anthem. We are the voice you tried to silence. We are the storm you thought passed. We are humanity, and we are not done. Then it fired. The beam wasn't explosive, it was surgical, a rail of heat that sliced clean through the destroyer's side like it was made of silk. Fires burst across its body. The crew tried to retreat. But more ships were rising now. One by one, the old fleet returned to the stars, and every one of them carried memory. Every one of them remembered. The stars were no longer silent. They were screaming. The reborn Earth fleet tore through space with the fury of a ghost that refused to stay buried. Blade-shaped ships with black hulls glided through enemy lines, moving not with rage, but purpose. Precision. Memory turned into momentum, and behind them, trailing their wake, was the signal Maera had sent across the stars, now echoing through every open channel. We are the voice you tried to silence. We are the storm you thought passed. We are humanity, and we are not done. The Empire had tried to prepare. It had scrambled fleets from dozens of sectors, pulled dreadnoughts out of cold storage, even reactivated retired warlords. But it didn't matter. This wasn't a conventional war. This was a reckoning. Inside the reborn command ship, now christened Epitaph, Mara stood in the center of the bridge, armor scorched, her eyes focused on the holomap as the fleet advanced. Gray leaned on a railing nearby, bruised but grinning. Fleet formation is holding. Our left flank's got resistance, but the hybrid vessel is punching through. How many? Mara asked. About 24 ships still holding Empire colors. They're scrambling to protect the core line. She tapped the side of her helmet, opening a comms feed to all allied ships. This is Mara, she said. No more broadcasts, no more warnings. This is the final strike. We don't ask, we don't beg. We remind them who we are. A dozen commanders across the fleet acknowledged at once. Some were human. Some were born of other species, long crushed under the Empire's boot, who had joined once they saw the truth Earth had uncovered. And some weren't even alive in the traditional sense, AI fragments of the original resistance, now awakened and angry. The Epitaph led the charge. The final battle took place near Varen's spine. A jagged cluster of broken moons turned into an imperial bastion decades ago, the fortress wrapped around a dying star, protected by rotating cannon platforms and shield generators fed by solar siphons. It was the last line of defense before the Empire's core territories, and it had never been breached. Until now. As the human fleet approached, the Empire activated every defense system. Anti-ship weapons fired before targeting systems had finished locking. Drone swarms were deployed from hangars like locusts. The outer walls of the bastion lit up in warning red, and High Command broadcast a single message: stand down or be extinguished. Maera didn't answer. She nodded to Reel, who grinned and activated the fleet's new signal scrambler, technology born from hybrid minds, which warped electromagnetic waves using gravity folds. The enemy's comms went dead. Their aim followed. And the sky broke open. The Wanderlight dove into the first gap, its engine screaming like a phoenix clawing through ash. It fired 2 torpedoes that exploded not on impact, but inside enemy shields, folding space milliseconds before detonation to bypass their barriers. Then came the Epitaph. It didn't shoot. It spoke. A deep pulse erupted from its hull, an EMP built from resonance frequencies woven through centuries of stored grief. Machines on the Imperial side stuttered, lights dimmed, AI cores glitched. Some of the enemy ships began remembering things they weren't supposed to. Slaughtered colonies, war crimes scrubbed from the record, truths their programming had hidden deep. A captain on one of the Imperial destroyers pulled his pistol and shot his own pilot. 3 other ships surrendered immediately. The rest fought harder. On the bridge, Mara locked eyes with Gray. His knuckles were white around the handle of his blade. "How long can they hold?" she asked. He shrugged. "Doesn't matter." Myra smiled faintly. "Exactly." They moved in deeper, the epitaph cutting through flak fire like a needle threading through a storm. It wasn't invincible. The shields flickered. The hull groaned. A blast from one of the planetary cannons clipped the rear wing, but it kept going. Every time a human ship was struck, 2 more filled the space behind it. And then, it happened. Sarah, the hybrid born with the exosuit interface, standing at her station on the bridge, turned her head slowly toward Mara. Her voice was quiet. Calm. "They've activated the central fusion core." Mara's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to blow the entire station?" "Yes," Sarah replied. "If they can't win, they'll take the system with them." Real's voice crackled over comms. "I'm reading instability. The core's gonna melt through Varen's spine and collapse the whole star cluster. You've got 12 minutes, maybe less." Myra stared at the star map. She could retreat, save the fleet, live to fight again. But Earth had already done that once, and it had almost been forgotten. Not this time. She turned to Sarah. "Can we reach the core?" The hybrid nodded. "Through the old tunnels. Not heavily guarded. Too unstable." Myra looked at Gray. "Let's finish it." They dropped onto the surface of the bastion with a shock team. Mara, Gray, Sarah, and 2 hybrid soldiers. The tunnels beneath the fortress were cracked and decaying, exposed to hard radiation and atmosphere leaks. Every step closer to the core made Myra feel like she was walking inside a dying beast. "You know," Gray muttered through his comms, "if we die here, I'm blaming you." Myra smirked. "Get in line." Sarah paused at a junction, her exosuit lighting the way forward. "Cores straight ahead, 10 floors down. Fusion destabilization at 42%. They moved quickly, dodging half-functional turrets and passing deactivated AI sentinels frozen mid-scream. Whatever had been inside this base before, it was breaking now. Then they reached the control chamber. And it wasn't empty. A single figure stood at the center, tall, robed armor beneath glinting with rank, Imperial insignia carved across the chest plate. His face was lined, gaunt, half covered in a breathing mask, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "You made it," he said. Mara stepped forward, gun drawn. "Shut it down." The man didn't move. "You don't know what you're doing. This empire? It's the only thing keeping the galaxy from chaos." "No," Mara said. "It's the thing that caused it." The man sneered. "You think just because you found a few dead ships and some broken history, you get to rewrite everything?" Mara shook her head. "I'm not rewriting it." She looked past him at the core, glowing red, pulsing faster now. "I'm restoring it." Then she fired. The shot hit his shoulder, spinning him to the floor. Before he could rise again, Sarah reached the console and plunged her arm into the access port. The system screamed, and then the pulse stopped. The core dimmed. Real's voice came over comms. "Fusion surge just halted. The star's stabilizing. They can't use it anymore." Cheers erupted over the fleet-wide channel. Gray exhaled. "We actually did it." Myra looked at the man bleeding on the floor. "You ruled for centuries with silence, with fear. That ends now." She walked past him without another word. The fall of Varen's spine was the last nail. Over the next few weeks, systems once loyal to the Empire began defecting. Governors vanished. Trade guilds broke their contracts. Entire fleets surrendered without firing a shot. And the memory of Earth, its truth, its people, its war cry, spread like light through shadow. Maera stood once again aboard the epitaph, now docked over a liberated world. The stars looked different now, familiar. Across the galaxy, statues were torn down and new ones raised. Not of her, but of the nameless humans who had slept beneath the surface, waiting for their story to be told. Gray walked up beside her, sipping from a steaming mug. "You ever think we'd get this far?" Maera smiled softly. "No." He handed her the mug. "But we didn't come this far to stop now." And far above, in a quiet corner of space, the hybrid vessel drifted peacefully. Its commander, no longer hidden in shadows, walked the halls alone, past frozen warriors and silent consuls. He placed his hand on a wall and whispered, "They remember now." And in return, the ship whispered back, "We always did."